Hello everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in our series entitled Building Your MSP Sales Process. Today we are joined by David Weeks, who will be taking us through this incredibly important topic. David has been in the industry for years and has worked with some of our most successful MSPs in the industry worldwide. He works very hard transferring the knowledge he's learned from that experience to as many MSPs as possible, and as such, last year and this year, David was honored as being named one of CRN's channel chiefs and joined a very elite group of individuals in our industry. We're very happy to have him presenting for us today, but before I hand it over, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. First off, and before you ask, yes, we will be recording this webinar and should be sending you all a link to in the next couple of weeks. Next, during the presentation, if you have any questions as we go, please type them into the questions section on your right. I'll either answer them immediately or save them for David to answer at the end. Okay? If I'm going to save the questions, it's because I feel it's something everyone can benefit from in hearing, and I'll make sure I respond by letting everybody know that I'm saving it till the end, so you know that I'm not ignoring you. Okay? So, without further ado, I'd like to thank David and pass it over to him to get started.
Thanks, Eris, much appreciated, and thank you everybody for joining today. And you know, we understand how difficult it is as service providers for you to take some time out of your day to join us on a series like this. And it's, you know, I believe, as Eris mentioned, this is an extremely important topic. Every organization struggles with sales to some point, and it's the lifeblood of an organization, and it's really all about the growth that you can generate within your organization, but as well looking at the valuation of your business as well too. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the sales process side, and process is really important. Having a structure to the way that you develop and build out your sales is critical to success. And so some of the areas that we're going to cover are obviously the challenges that we see in the industry. A bigger discussion around who should your target audience be. And really a big question on that, and we get all the time, is how do I develop what my target audience is? Because many of you as service providers have a very, a varied audience of different types of customers today that you deal with. But how do I pinpoint down to who do I really want to target? What are some of the barriers that you might be hitting today? What are the requirements for that positioning? What is the approach, the fundamentals? And then really, an extremely important topic is how do you differentiate your sales process between net new customer acquisition and then looking at conversion. And conversion is that upsell, cross-sell of an existing customer. And there's a lot of business that can be generated and derived from there. And then how do you differentiate yourself, and just some general sales advice overall. And I'll be really interested after to understand some of what you all think about the way that we're going to position this today, and hopefully that you find that this is helpful and gives you some information to help you streamline that sales process that you utilize currently. So when we look at MSPs in the market today, we know that they really struggle with two core areas. One is really efficient service delivery, but the biggest struggle that we see out there is new customer acquisition. And if I talk to service providers around the world, the number one thing that most of them say to me is that they rely on referrals. Referrals are absolutely amazing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And controlling your referrals and having a defined referral program is important to your success. However, referrals are extremely subjective, and they're subjective in that the person who is referring you is referring based on what they believe your value is. So if you're going to rely on referrals, you want to control that and you want to educate those customers. And I'm a little bit off on a tangent here, but I believe that that's important. Now, when we look at new customer acquisition, really the big important part is how do you drive your own opportunity? And how do you drive those leads into your business, into the top of the funnel, drive them through the process, and they come out the bottom as a closed opportunity where you have a successful win, and from there we start to generate more monthly recurring revenue. And the interesting part is when I talk to MSPs around the world, they consistently say to me, I'm not really a salesperson. But it's interesting that you built your business to this point, so you do have a sales ability. So it's probably, and what I typically will say to people is that you have a lack of confidence in your sales ability. And I think we can help with that today. When you have a defined structure and you have stages to run through and the type of information that you want to cover, it's going to give you more confidence in the way that you manage those opportunities. The third big area that I'm going to discuss today is that managed services is 100% a business sale. When you're selling to the SME market and we're not dealing with an internal IT person, that is where we have a business sale. Okay, when we try and talk in a technology fashion, we start to lose our audience. And really what everybody's looking for is what's the end result of what it is that you're going to provide me. And so with a defined sales process, you get a repeatable process. And with a repeatable process, you have the ability then to replicate, make improvements where needed as you drive those opportunities through the pipeline and understand where you may run into an issue and where you may need to make some changes. And then again, obviously, understanding who's our target audience. We can throw out a massive wide net, which is absolutely fine. But from that, we've got to be able to qualify those opportunities as they come in based on their viability. And so we'll look at a little bit of that today as well, too. So when we talk about your target audience, this is really where it all starts. If I'm going to proactively try and drive leads into my business, who do I want to target? And understanding that target type customer is difficult. It's difficult in that, as I mentioned earlier, you probably have a varied breadth of different types of customers that you deal with. I'm sure some are a headache, but a lot of them are very good. And so how do I define which ones do I want? So really, let's start with your existing customer base and think about who are your best customers that you have today, who pays on time, who's happy with the results that you deliver, who do you have a great relationship with, who's been a long-standing customer with you, and then ask the question, why did they buy from you? Why do they continue to do business with you? And you may not be able to answer that yourself, but go ask them. Your existing customers are one of your best sources of information, yet we tend to not have that discussion with them. And when you understand why they purchase from you and why they maintain a relationship with you, that is all part and parcel of the process that we're going to build on the sales side and how we interact with net new customers and prospects as we try and drive them into our business and sign contracts with them. Now, look at your customers. Can we start to segment them into groups? Maybe we've got the large spenders, the mid-range spenders, and the small spenders. Maybe we have sensitivity to downtime. Maybe we have the type of infrastructure that you manage with them. How you segment is really an open book, and your channel sales specialist can help you with that to get you a better understanding of how you want to look at your customer base, because in each of those groups, you may have the best customers, the mid-range and the lower end. So again, we can start to qualify and start to build out a target audience on a few different levels. And then leverage those ideal customers as your target market. How do we go replicate and find those new opportunities in the marketplace? And that's really the million-dollar question. Leads are always difficult to generate, but the more that you put your name out there, the more that you put your brand out there, and the more that you put a message into the marketplace that drives relevant value, the more that you will get the opportunity to speak to those prospects. Now, when I talk to a lot of service providers, I say, are you in any specific verticals? And their answer to me is not really. We do have service providers, obviously, who are very specific to one or two vertical, and that works extremely well for them. But when you look at your base, you probably already are in some fashion in a vertical or two. Maybe we can start to exploit that. Moving into verticals is extremely lucrative, but it does take a lot of work to penetrate it. But what's interesting is that there's a commonality in the way that they all do business. And what we get is what we call horizontal growth. And horizontal growth is where after we're into that industry, we start to get passed through the supply chain. So I'll give you an example. If we're dealing with a medical clinic and there's some compliance or regulatory concerns, there's a potential that we can start to expand out to suppliers of that medical firm because they would have the similar regulations, similar needs, and similar concerns. So as a result, we start to branch out more, and that pass-through business becomes more of a controlled referral. So again, looking at those types of programs, work with us as your vendor to help you build out a structure around that, because if we can get you into some verticals or into more defined target markets, you will tend to see a greater level of success in your sales. So let's look at a traditional approach. This is what we would call a solution sales process. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. The biggest box is lead generation. Why is it the biggest? You want to drive as many leads as possible into that box. From there, we start to qualify or disqualify those opportunities. And from that, the goal of everything that we want to do is simply get an initial meeting with that prospect. And that initial meeting is what we would call the qualification phase. Now, what happens in the qualification phase is an understanding of whether or not there's a need or a reason to continue to move forward in the sales process. But the problem that happens here is typically when I talk to service providers, they will walk into a qualification meeting, they spend a lot of time talking about themselves, and then they spend a lot of time talking about the pains of technology. But we haven't got to the root issue of why you're there. It's not about a pain in technology. It's about a concern of that business owner about the way that their environment's being managed and the end result that they're receiving. So the qualification phase needs to change into an open-ended model where we're having them speak to us as much as possible. Now, when people get into the qualification meeting and we work with service providers, they get to the end of that and they're trying to sell something. That's a big mistake. You're not at the point yet of offering a service. We still need to do our due diligence. So when we change our mindset to where the qualification meeting, the only goal when we leave that qualification meeting is to book the ability to do a technical and business assessment. But again, what happens is we tend to focus on the technology. And what happens is when we drive that report from the environment, we tend to report back and present technology findings. So again, we're lacking that viewpoint of what's the end result that that customer is going to receive if they come on board with us. And then we get to the close phase. So we've provided them some information, but then they struggle with providing that value and that end result. And in a lot of cases, what happens here, and it's a pet peeve of mine, is service providers who tell me that they email a proposal to a prospect. The problem with not doing it face-to-face, and I understand you can't 100% of the time do it face-to-face, but we could do it via phone, is that when you send a proposal through to a customer or to a prospect, the first thing that they do is ignore all of the front-end information and flip to your pricing page. So now they potentially have sticker shock because they haven't read through the value that you're going to bring for that monthly services fee. We then end up in an objection scenario on price, but price is never really an objection. It's about a lack of understanding of what I'm getting for the monthly spend that I will be investing with you as a service provider. So the close is really an important component to explain all of the findings of the proposal. What will be the results to the business owner? And those results then derive a value that give you the right to ask for the business. And from there, we move into implementation. Now, this is a fairly linear process. And what I'm going to show you today is a little bit of a mix-up in this with a few more stages that's going to give you a little bit more capability and a little bit more management of the way that you control the sales process. So again, what are some of the barriers? Technology. Why is technology a barrier? It's a barrier when we're selling to a business owner or a business decision maker in that you as a service provider intimately understand technology. And as a result, it becomes a comfort zone. It's a comfort zone to find out what is a problem that they're having today, and I know that I can fix it. And that's a great result. However, we're still not driving the business value to start to justify in the mind of that prospect why they need to spend money with us on a monthly basis. So you may have that comfort level, but the business owner starts to get lost in that conversation. They see that you might be able to fix several of their annoyances that they have today, but we have to have a larger picture there. We have to have a larger scope of talking to what we call critical business services. What's a critical business service? It's not what necessarily a company sells. And it probably relates to that. But really think about a critical business service as any way that an organization generates revenue. Because how they generate revenue will have technology backing it, and that technology needs management. So if we start at the far end and talk about supporting their revenue streams versus talking about supporting the technology, now we're in the mindset of a business owner. So when you align services to the revenue, a business owner starts to see value immediately. think of yourself as a business owner. You're always looking at your revenue coming in. You're trying to understand, how can I protect that revenue? How can I increase that revenue? What is my profitability? What am I putting to the bottom line? What can I invest back in the business? That's the exact same mindset of a prospect that you're talking to. But the differential is that they utilize technology to do that protection, or to drive that revenue, or to increase that revenue. And really, if you look at any business in the world today, there's not really virtually any organization that doesn't rely on technology in some format. So as a result, there's a management component. Yes, there's the standard pitch that we can talk about protecting the investment on hardware and on infrastructure and on services. Absolutely, that's important. But take that another step further. What does that mean as a business driver for that owner to help them, again, protect the revenue, maintain the revenue, or increase the revenue? And you're going to continue to hear me say that today about the protection, the maintenance, and the increase in the revenue, because that's really what it's all about. And that's how we start to get the mindset of a business owner to really jump in and say, you know what? I feel that we have a partnership here. It's not just about you coming in to manage my computers and that server in the corner that I don't even really know what it does. It's about you having a relationship. And that relationship goes a long way in that you're working cohesively together to ensure that you're helping them in the way that they want to scale their organization. So what are 3 key things that we need to think about when selling managed services? How does their network drive revenue? So I want you all to think about that for a minute. It can be multiple layers of that infrastructure. So obviously we know that the server probably manages some critical line of business apps, or maybe some of those critical line of business apps are in the cloud. That's okay. It doesn't mean that we don't have services around it. So we can have the conversation, for instance, if they use a CRM that's hosted locally or in the cloud, and we can say that I will ensure optimum uptime of that CRM. Well, yes, and I hope that you do, and I know that you will. But the benefit to the business owner is that if I maintain that, then your salespeople remain as productive as possible or have enhanced productivity because of the management that I'm doing. As a result, they could be driving more revenue into the business. That is a value that a business owner will have that discussion with you every day. Showing them the cost of an outage is greater than the remediation bill. This really plays to people who aren't on a contract-based service today. So business owners believe that when they have an outage and they call for help, the bill that they receive is the total cost of that downtime issue. But there's soft and hard dollar costs that come with a network outage. And I'll show you some of those today with a simple email outage and a quick ROI that you can do with a business owner that will really allow them to understand what the real cost to their organization is. And then being proactive saves costs versus waiting for issues. I'm going to give an analogy I use all of the time. This is the analogy that I do with service providers and that I do when I'm even talking to end users. If you wait for an issue to occur and you wait for something to break, it's what I call the fire started. And what that means is that a business owner incurs 3 costs. They incur fire damage, water damage, and smoke damage, because you had to put all of those issues together and you had to put out the fire. And as a result, the water caused some issues and then the smoke caused some issues. And now we have a whole bunch of cleanup to do. So we have a higher level of cost. Now, what if you had just put a smoke detector in place? And we were able to get to that earlier and eliminate that breakage and that outage because we were proactively managing the environment. Yes, I'm paying on a monthly basis, but 12, 16, 18, 24 months of payments could be less than one major outage. So it's hedging your bets against it. And really the concept to a business owner is that they may not feel that they've ever had an issue to date. And I hear that objection all the time, but they're probably just waiting for it to occur. And if you haven't had an issue to date or they've been minor, it's only a matter of time before the big one happens. And when the big one happens is when we can have, a multi-day event where we lose productivity, we lose revenue, and the cost of the business is massive. So what we want to do is we want to focus the sale on the end user experience. It's not about the core infrastructure, but it's how do their employees interact with technology? Why do they use it? Which departments have the heaviest reliance on technology? And as a result, what does that mean? How much revenue do they generate per hour? Most business owners will know their revenue per hour of an employee. So then we can start to align those business requirements to the technical infrastructure. And now we're having a better conversation on that revenue level. So ROI always falls in line with productivity and revenue per employee. And what I mean by that is it's all around the human resource cost of that person sitting in front of a machine. What part of the infrastructure affects them doesn't really matter. The fact is that that HR cost has a return on it in revenue for the work that the employee is doing. If the employee can't work, I just carry a flatline HR cost and I'm not generating any benefit off of it. So why do we talk about the human resource cost? Well, when you look at some of the top MSPs in the world, they do this because it's a business value, it's a business discussion. But the second side is that typically in every business, the number one cost is payroll. It's human capital. And the second biggest cost is technology. So as a result, the two intermingle extremely well to have that discussion with a business owner about why they interrelate. But we want to front end it with the business discussion. So let's look at the ROI quickly, and we will go deeper into this on further sessions throughout the MSP Bootcamp, but I didn't want to leave you without any idea of how we do this. So what we're looking at here is a reliance on company IT resources. Now, there's probably a multitude of teams within that organization, but we've taken the three core ones: the executive team with 5 people on it, a sales team with 8 people, and an administrative team with 7. So that would be your finance and so forth. Now, there's 3 core applications that they rely on: a financial software, a CRM, and email and messaging. Now, why would I have email and messaging in there? The reason that we have email and messaging in there is because everybody believes email is critical. If email goes down, employees believe that they can't work. Even though the phones may still work, they feel that they don't have that opportunity. It's the same idea. If the phones go down, they forget that email works. So email is something that in everybody's mind, because it's so instantaneous and it's so easily accessible, that it's a great opportunity and an ROI to utilize. And because email has outages, whether they're on Office 365, whether they're on a hosted exchange, whether they're on a physical exchange, it doesn't matter. It has that instant level of effectiveness when it comes to an employee. So now we look at the reliance, and the reliance doesn't have to add up to 100%. It can be over, because an employee can be utilizing multiple different applications at once. And then what we want to do is we want to look at the average hourly wage, which gives us a departmental cost per hour. So for instance, the average wage in an executive is $50 an hour, sales is $37, administrative is $23, and we get our departmental costs. Now, let's look at what this means when we talk about a partial outage on email, for instance, of 3 hours. So this would be an instance where a business is not proactively managing their environment. And you can change this to 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours. Maybe you have a real scenario with a time and material customer that you could utilize here. So the executives at 3 hours of outage at $250 an hour as a departmental cost, with an 80% reliance on email and messaging, have a cost to the business of $600. Sales, $799. Administrative, $169. So our total soft dollar cost is $1,568. Now, they end up picking up the phone because, you know what, somebody realized that email's down. They asked the person next to them. They said, oh, you know what, you're right, mine's not working either. And, you know, maybe the guy in the office who thinks he's IT tried to fix it. That didn't quite work. So they've already delayed calling you. It's already 45 minutes in, and now they pick up the phone, they ring you, and they say, we seem to be having an email issue. You have no agent sitting in the environment, so you're going to drive on site. So it's going to take time for you to drive there, and you're going to have a 2-hour bill at $115 an hour, which is going to cost them $230. In the mindset of a business owner, their cost to remediate that 3-hour outage was $230. However, the real cost of the business was 1,800. So when you think about an ROI and a quick and easy way to show a downtime scenario and the cost to a business and the loss in productivity, a business owner quickly connects and says, you know what? The proactive method does make more sense than waiting for an issue to occur. Because if the issue on email was alerted too early and you were able to go in and mitigate it before that outage occurred, we avoid all of these costs, and it just falls into the monthly services fee. So let's look at it a little bit of a different way to look at that sales process moving forward. First is your lead generation. That never changes. Okay, the lead generation is all about your inbound effort. What are you doing to drive leads to your business? That can be, looking at different groups and networking that you do in your community. It can be outbound marketing. It can be digital marketing. Whatever it is that you need to do to drive leads into the business, do it. And if you need ideas, any one of your channel sales specialists can assist in understanding different ways to drive those leads. From those leads, we do the qualification, and the qualification now brings us into what we call a business analysis. Not a qualification meeting anymore where we're saying, why are you talking to me? Where do you have issues and where are things bugging you? Now we want to understand what are their expectations of their IT and of their service provider. And you can drive that conversation and control it. What are some of their business goals? Are they growing? Do they need elasticity? Are they actually planning to contract and shrink? Do they want to be able to do more with less? Are they sick of making capital expenditures and maybe we can look at an OpEx model in the cloud? Maybe, and today we know it's one of the biggest drivers of business, is security. So we can have that discussion around security. So the goal of our business analysis now is that, yes, we're going to do our regular technical assessment, but that's not what we're going to sell. That's going to get done. We're going to put our agents out. We're going to do a security risk assessment. We're going to run something in the environment. But your goal here is with those open-ended questions, you've had that prospect talk to you a lot, right? As the old saying goes, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So utilize the 2 ears first. So those open-ended questions get that person, that decision maker talking. They're providing you ammunition to justify the next stage in the process. So what do you want to do after your business analysis is you want to start to arrange to speak to some of the end users. And that's where we get into what we call an end user workflow analysis. Again, during this time, you're doing your regular technical assessment, but that's going to be Appendix A and supporting information to justify the business value that we drive forward. So now what we want to do is maybe we meet with some different department heads and maybe a few of the employees in the environment, and we want to understand their workflow. We want to understand how do they use technology? Why do they use it the way that they do? What are their concerns? And now what you're doing is you're differentiating yourself from a lot of other MSPs out there, and you're starting to build the relationship, not only with the decision maker at the top of the organization, but with different users internally, which means that there's a face to your service, and you want to have a face to your service. From there, we look at the business growth and support plan. So your technical findings need to translate into how does that affect a business driver? So how are you going to support them in their business goals? And this is where your ROI comes in around productivity, HR cost, revenue, protection, maintenance, and increase. Okay, those are the 3 key areas that we want to be talking about. So now we start to have the relationship. Now the decision maker is seeing value in what it is that you're providing because it's all around their organization's goals, their business drivers, and their revenue. So now with that relationship and with that work that I've done, I have the right to ask for the business. And that's really what it's all about, is building a process that you get to the point where you drive the value, you've handled the objections, you've had the great conversations, you've got the empirical evidence from the environment that you've translated into a business driver, and now you have the right to ask for the business. So ask for it. because you've already given them the ROI. So you've justified it. You've shown that your monthly cost is less than not being proactive or not taking the services that you're offering. And make sure that when you have that meeting to ask for the business, that all of the relevant people are involved. Now, from that, now you move into the implementation model. Now we have a plan with them on how we're going to roll out our services, and you're going to have an onboard meeting. And that onboard meeting is going to be, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I need from you as a customer. Here's what you're going to get from us to get you on board, to get everything set up. And then we'll do some follow-up meetings, and we'll let you know when that initial implementation project is complete. And here's the timeline that we will adhere to. Now, when that's done is when you start VCIO and account management. Virtual Chief Information Officer services are critical today. Emailing a report at the end of the month doesn't really suffice anymore. Because you've built a sales process where it's all about their business drivers and their revenue, you need to be a part of that. You're now part of their goals. You're now part of their growth plan. So you need to be that Chief Information Officer where you're bringing value in on-site meetings, where your reporting just becomes a component of what your suggestions are, where you're doing regular reviews of the services that you provided, and the most critical component is what was the result of that? And then what are the plans moving forward? So you may start to plan with them 12, 24, and 36 months out. That means that you're getting more deeply entrenched into their business. That means that you have an opportunity now, maybe at renewal or even earlier on, to look to longer term contracts with the customer because you've planned out the growth. You've planned out the growth, and in that consulting that you do through the VCIO, you're actually implanting a lot of cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So now within your pipeline, on that upsell cross-sell, you can start to forecast net new business through yourself or through your sales team. So again, you have better control over your revenue projections. Excuse me, and that's important as you move forward. So I'll give this a moment for you all. Just take a look at this and think about how that might fit into what you're doing today. And we'll get this out to everybody so you have it as an infographic, something that you can build off of. You don't necessarily need to do it exactly the way that we're doing it today, but this may give you an idea of how you want to build out your process and your flow moving forward. So really, what are the fundamentals of a sales process? Well, lead generation is everything, because without leads, we're not going to have a lot that we can manage through the pipeline. So waiting for a lead to come in, that's a difficult component for a business, because if you're not driving activity to get that lead to come in, you're going to have very few or none, which means that your growth is stagnant. So if you're thinking as a service provider that I'm looking potentially for an exit strategy in the future, I want to leave a successful business to somebody in the family, I want to look at some type of merger or acquisition opportunity in the future, the valuation on your business is not just in the amount of recurring revenue, but the way that you drive new opportunity, the way that you drive leads, and the way that you qualify them and you drive them through the sales process. So lead generation is critical to everything, to the growth of your business. Now, with those leads, we need to properly qualify them, because you have a cost of sale on everything that you do. And when you have a cost of sale, you want to limit it. You don't want to be just down to the point of a tire kicker, somebody who's not going to spend the money. And you may identify that very early. And if you do, it's okay to make the decision to walk away from the opportunity. Because your cost of sale, the more time that you spend with a unqualified op, will just cost you money. So as we get into it, identify the areas, right, where you as the MSP can assist. Your sales process needs to be consultative. Okay, it's not a direct pitch. They know that you're the best MSP in the market. So is everybody else. You're going to have to differentiate yourself. We'll talk about that in a bit, right? And let's not focus on the technology. Then we get the workflow done, right? The workflow is the key. You get in, the assessment's done in the background. but we're meeting with the end users. We're aligning their needs to the way that we're delivering service. Educate, educate, educate constantly. The more that you educate, the more that you become invaluable to the decision maker, to the business as a whole. And what are the results? You can monitor all day, every day, everything in a customer's environment, but there's no real value in that to a business owner. So as an example, the value is, what is the result of that monitoring? The fact that you could be proactive, the fact that you avoided some major issues in the background that they were never even aware of. That's value to a business owner. And it's not that you avoided the issue, it's that I avoided the issue and therefore you did not incur X cost. Your people remained productive. Your revenue continued to flow. That's value. And then remember, when you close the sale, you got to justify your price. Okay, and everything that you do, ROI is critical. ROI will not only help you to justify the price that you have, but in many cases, ROI will help you increase the size of the deal. They may want to start small with you. They may only want you to manage the servers or a subset of the workstations, but your ROI will probably show the need to manage the whole environment. Therefore, you can start to supersize your deals and get a bigger piece of the pie initially upfront. So let's look at the two different areas, right? Acquisition first, new customer acquisition. Who's your target audience? We talked about that. Okay, and if you don't know today, work with your channel sales specialist. We'll help you build out who are your target prospects that we want to go after. How do you gain trust? That's all part of the relationship building, because you need to be a trusted advisor to them. So again, we're back to the more information that they give you, the more that you can be that trusted advisor. Understand their workflow, and then position the appropriate offering to support it. Do right by your prospect or your customer. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. And I'm not saying that most of you do, but we see it in the industry. Okay? Be confident in the value that you bring. Be confident in your costing. Be confident in your services. And be confident in your organization. That resonates in a sales process. And if the customer wants to start smaller than what you're proposing, take it. Because you're going to have the opportunity to continue to work on conversion and growth with them. I don't care what your beachhead is or your low entrance barrier offering. If you can get in the door and start generating some form of revenue off of a prospect, you start to build the relationship. And now, when you have that relationship, you have trust. Now you get more empirical evidence, which justifies more opportunity to continue to add in line items of service that you know will protect the revenue, maintain the revenue, or increase the revenue. And our sales process that we saw doesn't change. It may just be expedited when we cross-sell. Still need to do ROI. May still need to do the workflow analysis. We may still need to do some assessments, but you're in the environment and you have that ability. So now you have all of this information that you can use through your VCIO services or through your on-site CIO services to start to justify the plan moving forward. And maybe they don't take the service for 6 or 8 months. That's okay. Maybe they need a project done, but they're not ready to give you a large capital outlay. So maybe we take the labor component of the project and we filter that into the monthly services fee, and all they have to budget for is maybe some hardware or software that they need to purchase. And we can plan that they pay for that project over a period of time before implementation. You can become very flexible and fluid in the way that you work with a customer because you have a better understanding once you're in the environment. Now, going out to market as a service provider, the majority of you offer a very similar service as a baseline, which is fine. But all of you have a differentiating factor. And it's critical to understand your differentiating factor because it relates directly back to all of the marketing that you'll do and how you drive leads and how you stand out in your market. So today, if, for instance, you manage a customer where you just manage the servers, their viewpoint of you is that you are their server management company. But do they really have an impression or an understanding that you can be a full services provider or a security provider? Or maybe you can do hosting. Maybe you do software development. I don't know what your capabilities are, but look at your whole breadth of your portfolio and say, how can I differentiate myself out there? Because dependent on our target profile of who we're going after, it will depend on what we lead in with as the message. If I were going after very specific verticals like medical, financial, accounting, legal, I'd be leading maybe today with security. Where if I'm looking at a general business, I might be leading in with true managed services. Maybe I'm leading into customers who have a PCI compliance or POPI, same idea, where's the payment card industry standards in regards to the acceptance of credit cards and the protection of credit card data and access points and so forth. Maybe that's a lead in. It's okay. Again, it's your beachhead. Whatever gets you the opportunity to have that conversation with a decision maker, learn more about their business and drive business value gives you a better opportunity to attain a customer. And how do you define a profitable versus unprofitable prospect? You need to look for the indicators early on in the sales process. Somebody who may reach out to you and say, I just want your pricing, I don't want to meet with you. Good indicator that they're probably not that serious, right? And you want to drive them to the opportunity to have a meeting, because how do you give pricing on something that you don't even know what they need yet? Somebody where you're in the initial meeting who says, all of this sounds great, but I'd have to get approval to do it. You don't have the decision maker. So maybe that's an unprofitable prospect if you get with the decision maker and they say, I'm not interested in making any changes. So your qualification is happening throughout the whole process. So let's look at some of the advice. Sales is an art. It's not just a thing, okay? You have to have the fluidity in it. You have to have confidence in yourself. You need to truly believe in what it is that you're offering. And all of that resonates in a sales process. Do your due diligence up front. Don't just assume every opportunity is a good opportunity. Understand your own internal processes, your people. Does everybody understand what your messaging is, who you are, what's your brand, what value do you drive? Because all of that is critical to everybody being on the same page. And if you feel today that you're not really a salesperson, but you want to be there, go learn, go read about it. Look at different strategies in the marketplace. Talk to maybe some of your existing really good customers and find out how they run their sales process. People love to network and share ideas. Don't be afraid to sell. As a business owner, you're always selling your organization. That's what you do. Your employees can always be selling your organization. I always give this example. Somebody goes out for drinks with a few friends. There's some new people who are there. They don't really know them. And they say, hey, I'm Dave. You're so-and-so. Nice to meet you. And what's the first question that gets asked? What do you do for a living? That's a sales opportunity. So your staff can always be selling for you no matter what role that they're in. We talked about the 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen, listen, listen. It's critical. We want to be asking open-ended questions, not yes, no, open-ended. The more a prospect talks to us, the more ammunition that we have, the more information, the more viability to justify our services. We know that you're a great service provider, but we don't need to tell them constantly throughout the sales process. They already have a level of trust in the willingness to meet with you. So make it all about them. Okay? Again, cause and effect. right? What you do on a daily basis for management, there is an end result. There's an effect. The effect is what you want to talk to. That is what a business owner is looking for. That's the value that's generated from the service. I can't stress relationship enough. The earlier that you can form a relationship, the better your opportunity to close your business. People like to do business with people that they like. It's as simple as that. Okay, and the old adage of, I'm throwing out of a lot of analogies today and adages, but the old adage of everybody wants to buy, but they don't want to be sold is very true. And relationship takes that away because they feel that they're part of the process. They feel that they're part of the conversation, that they've had an input, that they've been able to make decisions around how they structure the agreement. All of that is important. And when you feel that you have that trust, when you've seen what we call, you know, the trial acceptances where they're going, that sounds really good, or you know what, that's what we've been looking for. Those are trial closes. Those are indicators where you should be picking up on those and saying, hey, well, if we can achieve that, do you feel that we should, you know, potentially move forward? Yes, that sounds good. Trial buy, that's a good opportunity. Now you start to get the opportunity to ask for the business. 3 or 4 of those trial closes from a prospect going, that sounds really good. Yeah, I like that. You're close to being able to ask for the business, but don't do it too early on. You may hear that in the initial meeting that you have with them, but you may need to give it time, but make note of them. All of that is important. All of it is critical in the way that you manage your sales process, the way that you're going to manage opportunity, the way that you're going to manage your relationships from inception of a prospect through to upsell, cross-sell after you have the agreement. Because regular growth within your business naturally increases the valuation of your organization. It gives you more stability, gives you more recognition in the marketplace. And overall, it will improve your confidence to be the salesperson that you are. The first win is always the hardest win. But once you get it, it seems like they start to flow a lot easier. So again, I want to thank everybody for their time today and just really think about the process as a whole and the overall methodology. Okay? End user budgets, understand them, ask the question. End user, speak to the experience. It's a business sale. What are the 3 key points that we talked about? Maintain revenue, protect revenue, increase revenue. Okay, and that's where your ROI will come from. So it's all important. It's all encompassing. And when it's a business sale, I promise you that your success rates will increase on closing deals. And your channel team is there. We're all here to support you in it. We want to help you in your growth. It's a win-win for everybody, for us, for you, and for your customers. So, Eris, we probably have some questions for everybody. Our next webinar will fall right in line with this, which will go deeper into identifying your target audience. That's on March 21st. You will hear from your channel sales specialist on this. We will send you a link to register, but it's here as well, too, if you want to jump in right now and get your name in there and then get the invite so you can throw it in your calendar. Eris, how are we looking on questions?
David, we have a few good ones, actually. So that was great, by the way. So first of all, when we were talking about ROI earlier on in the presentation, a question came up basically asking, how would you recommend us doing an ROI for an entity like a government or a nonprofit where, you know, they're not really a profit-driven organization?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, and we get that question a lot too. So what we do then is ROI is still based around budget adherence, okay? And so when you look at a not-for-profit type organization, they will then have to look at the budget that they have to maintain. Well, every time that there's an exponential issue within the environment or a downtime issue, those costs go against their budget. So the ROI actually still falls to an HR cost. It's just the HR cost is aligned to a budget and not necessarily to revenue generation. Now, they still generate some form of revenue, especially the tax department and the government, but nonetheless, there's that opportunity to still utilize the same methodology. Just take it from the budget adherence level versus the revenue level.
Next one, do you have any suggestions, Dave, when it comes to lead generation? Like where might we get a contact list from? Has anybody seen success that you know of buying a contact list from, say, a marketing firm?
Yeah, so there's several different areas, and I love this question. So when we look at lead generation, there's a multitude of areas that you can go, and I talked about local networking groups and so forth. Let's go back a little bit to the segmentation of your base. You're going to start to identify some industries that you work within. Could be construction, could be accounting, could be legal. One really good area for everybody to think about is in your local area, look for associations related to that industry. When you look locally, there's almost always an association for every type of industry. And what you'll be surprised is a lot of those association sites give their membership lists right on the website. There's a lead gen opportunity for you. You can do some proactive marketing. Maybe you go speak to the group, not a sales pitch, but go in and talk about the value of something to that industry. So you almost become an industry expert. The other is what we call circle of influence. You all started your business from people that you knew who then referred you to other people. Well, let's continue to use that. We tend to lose it, okay? And the third is, yes, you can buy lists, okay? There's lots out there. You can look at, your local chamber of commerce. Sometimes they'll sell their lists of membership. Again, you can look at associations who may offer lists for pay. You can even look at things like Dun & Bradstreet and so forth. And there's a lot of lead generation source companies out there that will provide and sell lists to you. The problem is that when you get a list, and there's nothing wrong with it, you're going to have to do some scrubbing on it. They're never going to be perfect, and it's, you're going to have a little bit more upfront work in terms of qualifying those leads.
Now, when you were talking about VCIO services, a question came up in regards to, how do you see that delivery? Do you see it just as, as advisory services, or a total ownership of their IT that includes managed services? How do you approach that?
So it generally leads to a total ownership of the technology, but it may not start that way. It is an advisory position where you're entrenching yourself into their business strategies. You typically will do those meetings once a quarter, and then there's an annual review. That would be a longer type session, maybe half day, full day. If they have a board, you'll probably have to present to the board. But the idea is that it's not about, the VCIO is not about, necessarily, how many alerts did we receive last month. Those reports you can provide at any given time, and, your average close time on a ticket was X. That's not what those meetings are about. The meeting is about, okay, this is where you are today. This is how your team's utilizing technology. But you guys want to see 30% growth in the business in the next 12 months. Well, we haven't accounted for scalability within your infrastructure for that. You plan to hire 20 more people. You plan to bring on a new line of business application. These are the things that we need to think about. Okay, so they're almost a sober second thought to the business strategy as it relates to the technology. But again, we drive those meetings on the business value, the growth goals, the strategic goals, and the revenue goals of the organization.
Now, do you see there being a difference between a traditional MSP that manages infrastructure and somebody who's managing the cloud? Like, do you see there being an additional value from one or the other?
You know what? That's a really interesting question. There's no additional value in my mind. It's what a customer needs. Now, as a service provider, I believe that you need to be directing people to a hybrid approach in the cloud. I believe it's the future. We know core infrastructure is going away. So protection of your revenues in your business as a service provider, I think you should be having that discussion. I believe that a prospect or a customer that has physical infrastructure on site, that every time that you provide a proposal, that you should be providing a virtual and a physical option so that they can see the OpEx model. It brings stability and reduces risk for you as a service provider, but it allows you to continue to educate your customer, even though they may not be ready today, to ensure that they understand that you can provide that service, because the large players out in the market, all the different cloud providers, the SaaS providers, they all do a very good job of marketing to those business owners, and you don't want them clicking through the website picking it. So no, it doesn't matter what type of infrastructure you're managing. I think it's how you drive the value. If they have an extremely critical business application that drives a ton of revenue for them, your focus of your service offering should be around that, and the rest of the infrastructure is just part and parcel. So it's really how you discuss what areas of the network are most important to revenue generation.
Now, when reviewing the proposal with the client, how do you prevent them from skipping ahead to the pricing? Like, should they put it on a separate page? Is there anything that you've seen people do to let them get through their conversation before they get to that point?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is, if you can't be on site, do it via WebEx. So you're presenting the proposal yourself. If you're there on site, don't put the pricing page in the proposal. Keep it back. Run through the proposal, drive all of your value, and then hand them the pricing page. So keep it separate. Please, when possible, do not email proposals. It allows a customer to pre-object. And you're not there to handle those objections. And as a result, that's when you're chasing them to try and get them to answer you on whether or not they have an interest in doing business with you. So, really those are the two things that I can recommend: is do it virtually via WebEx, and then you're there to drive the value. If you're there on site, hold back that costing page until you get through all of the value, and then present the pricing to them.
And I guess we're running out of time, so let's do one last one here. How aggressively do you measure the cost of acquisition? Like, are there any tools that you guys that we can recommend using?
You know what? I don't have any tools off the top of my head. I mean, it all depends on how much you're doing to drive the sale, right? I mean, if you're doing a lot of digital marketing and you're using tool sets like HubSpot and so forth, they'll help you drive a lot of that cost for you, so you have an understanding. But understanding your cost of acquisition is a multitude of different areas that you have to factor in. It's probably a much larger discussion. Probably actually, Eris, a really good opportunity for us to actually do a webinar on that in the MSP Bootcamp series, because I could probably go on right now for 20 minutes about cost of new customer acquisition and cost of lead. And those are really two different ways to look at it. So probably not the right spot right now, but think about how much time you invest. What is your time worth at a high level? What tool sets do you use, and what type of marketing are you doing? And all of that together will help you start to generate your cost of lead, and then understanding through to the sales process to close, what was my cost of acquisition?
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing that in both the sales and marketing modules coming up.
Excellent.
All right, so that's going to end it today, guys. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Dave, that was awesome. Great job, sir. Guys, if you have any questions for anybody, Dave, if you flip to the next slide so people can see your email address, if you don't mind, quickly. You can always email me as well, eris.demosthenes@, not that you know how to spell that, but just put it in the chat and I'll write it out for you. Email your channel sales rep if you don't know how to get to anybody, and we will help you guys out as much as possible. Look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks, where we're going to uncover the first part of the sales process that David was talking about, which is identifying your target audience and knowing who to sell to and what their characteristics are. Hope you found this very informative, and we hope to see you in all the webinars we're doing every 2 weeks in the boot camp. It was a pleasure, guys, and have a great day.